Let me tell you something about why women lust for their own shadow. A truth most people will never admit about desire. When a woman feels that intense magnetic pull toward someone, or that obsessive lust she can't control, she's not actually lusting after them. She's lusting after herself, her own shadow, the disowned parts of herself she sees reflected in that person. This is about women lusting for their own shadow, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. You know that feeling when you see someone? Maybe it's the way they move through a room, or how they speak without apology, or the darkness they carry without shame. And something inside you ignites, not just attraction, something deeper, hunger, recognition, almost like terror mixed with longing. Before we go deeper, I want you to think of the last person you couldn't get out of your head, the one who consumed you, that magnetic, obsessive pull you couldn't explain. Got them in mind? Good. Hold that image, because what I'm about to show you will reveal what you were really lusting after, and it's not what you think. Have you ever wondered why you're drawn to exactly what you've been taught to fear? Why does the bad boy archetype pull so hard? Why does danger feel like home? Why do you find yourself obsessed with people who embody the very qualities you've spent your whole life suppressing? Here's what they don't tell you. The person you're obsessed with, they're not who you think they are. Not to you. Not in your psyche. They're a mirror, reflecting something you can't see yet, something you've buried so deep you forgot it existed. You're not attracted to them. You're attracted to you. The version of you that got buried, the rage you swallowed, the wildness you tamed, the darkness you were told made you unlovable. Here's the wound beneath the desire. You learned very young that being fully you meant losing love, that wholeness and belonging were incompatible. So you chose love, and you've been mourning what you lost ever since. What if I told you that lust isn't about wanting someone else? It's about longing for the parts of yourself you've disowned. What if every person you've ever obsessed over was just a mirror, reflecting back the shadow you've been taught to hide? What if the reason you can't stop thinking about them is because they're living the life you forbade yourself from living? Think about it. Who are you drawn to? What qualities do they have that you've been told are wrong, dangerous, or inappropriate for someone like you? Is it their confidence? Their refusal to please? Their ability to say no without guilt? Their rage? Their appetite? Their darkness? And here's the question that'll keep you up at night. What would happen if you stopped projecting those qualities onto others and started owning them yourself? What if the lust you feel isn't a weakness? What if it's your psyche screaming at you to reclaim what you've abandoned? What if desire is just your shadow, begging to be integrated? There's a reason this pattern repeats. A reason you keep falling for the same type. A reason the attraction feels compulsive, obsessive, almost out of your control. And it's darker than you think. Because the person you're truly lusting after isn't out there. They're inside you, buried, exiled, waiting. And until you face that truth, you'll keep searching for them in everyone else's eyes. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you why you desire what you desire, why shadow attraction is the most powerful force in human psychology, and why the only way to break the pattern is to become what you've been chasing. This is going to hurt to hear, but you're still here. So let's go deeper. Most people think desire is simple. You see someone attractive, you want them. Biology, chemistry, hormones. End of story. But that's just the surface. Let me show you what's really happening when women lust for their own shadow. On the surface, you think you're attracted to them. Their looks, their personality, their energy. You think desire is about the other person. But here's the deeper truth. Desire is always about you. Always. Carl Jung spent his entire career studying this phenomenon. He called it projection. And it's one of the most powerful, misunderstood forces in human psychology. Here's how it works. Every quality you possess, every emotion, every impulse, every aspect of your personality, it falls into one of two categories: acceptable or unacceptable. The acceptable parts, those are your persona, the mask you wear, the version of yourself you've been taught is safe, lovable, worthy. The unacceptable parts, those are your shadow, the qualities you've been told are wrong, dangerous, shameful, the parts of you that got rejected, criticized, punished, so you buried them. But here's what most people don't understand. The shadow doesn't disappear just because you disown it. It goes underground, into the unconscious, where it gains power. And then, it starts showing up in your life, not as you, but as them, the people you're obsessed with, the ones you can't stop thinking about, the ones who make you feel alive, terrified, consumed. Jung called this shadow projection. You take the disowned parts of yourself and project them onto other people, and then you fall in love with your own reflection. But underneath the theory is a simple, brutal truth. You can't lust after what you already own. You can only lust after what was taken from you. And what was taken wasn't just your wildness or rage. It was your right to be whole and still be loved. Think about the last person you couldn't get out of your head. What qualities did they have? Were they unapologetically confident? Did they refuse to dim themselves? Did they express anger without shame? Did they take up space without apologizing? Now ask yourself, are those qualities you possess, or qualities you've forbidden yourself from expressing? But here's the part that's going to hurt. Because once you see this pattern, you can't unsee it. And that changes everything about how you've been living. Because here's the thing. You don't lust after qualities you already own. You lust after qualities you've exiled. The bad boy who doesn't care what people think, he's your disowned autonomy. The woman who speaks her mind without filtering, she's your disowned voice. The person who's unapologetically sexual, wild, free, they're your disowned desire. You're not attracted to them. You're attracted to you, the version of you that's been locked away. And the lust you feel, that's not chemistry. That's your psyche screaming at you to take yourself back. What would it mean if the people you desire aren't separate from you, but are actually showing you who you're meant to become? What if every obsession is a breadcrumb, leading you back to yourself? What if the qualities you find irresistible in others are the exact qualities you need to integrate? This isn't abstract philosophy. This is how your psyche works. This is why you keep repeating the same patterns, falling for the same type, feeling the same obsessive pull. Because you haven't reclaimed your shadow yet. And until you do, you'll keep searching for it in everyone else's eyes. But there's a deeper layer to this, one that changes everything. Because shadow projection isn't just about desire, it's about survival. And that's where it gets dark. Here's the part that'll wreck you. You didn't choose to exile your shadow. It was ripped from you, systematically, starting in childhood. And once you see how, you'll understand why every relationship you've ever had has been an attempt to complete what they took. This is how women learn to exile their shadows, not through choice, but through survival. Let me paint you a picture. You're a little girl, maybe 5, 6 years old, and one day you get angry, really angry. You scream, you slam a door, you tell someone exactly what you think of them. And what happens? You're punished, shamed, told that anger isn't ladylike, that good girls don't raise their voices, that nobody will love you if you're too much. So you learn. You swallow the rage. You smile when you want to scream. You make yourself small, palatable, safe. And a part of you, your wild, untamed, unapologetic self, gets locked away. Or maybe you're a teenager. You express your sexuality. You wear what you want, you flirt, you feel desire. And what happens? You're called a slut, told you're asking for it, shamed for wanting what you want. So you learn, you dim your desire, you police your body, you perform innocence, and another part of you, your erotic, embodied, unapologetically hungry self, gets buried. This is how the shadow forms, not through choice, but through survival. You exile the parts of yourself that got you rejected, because rejection feels like death when you're young, because belonging is survival. So you create a persona, a mask, a version of yourself that's acceptable, lovable, safe, and you bury everything else. But here's what Jung understood, and what changes everything. The shadow doesn't die. It doesn't disappear. It goes into the unconscious, where it grows, festers, gains power, and then it starts showing up. Not as you, but as them. Picture this. You're at a party. Across the room you see her. She's loud, unapologetic, taking up space. She's magnetic. Everyone's drawn to her. And you feel it. That pull, that hunger. You can't stop watching her. Not because she's beautiful, because she's free. And that freedom? It feels like a knife in your chest. Because it's yours, and you buried it. Because she's living the life you forbade yourself from living. She's expressing the rage you swallowed, the wildness you tamed, the unapologetic selfhood you buried. And your psyche recognizes her, not as a stranger, but as you, the disowned you, the exiled you. That's shadow projection. And it's not just attraction, it's magnetic, obsessive, almost violent in its intensity. Because the shadow doesn't just want to be acknowledged, it wants to be integrated. It wants to come home. And until you let it, it'll keep showing up in the people you lust after, obsess over, can't let go of. Jung worked with a woman once, a patient who came to him consumed by desire for a man she barely knew. She couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, she was obsessed. And Jung asked her, "What qualities does he have that you don't allow in yourself?" At first she resisted, but eventually she saw it. He was confident, assertive, unapologetic. Everything she'd been taught was too much. And Jung said, "You don't want him, you want to be him." The moment she heard that, something shifted. The obsession lost its power. Because she saw the truth. She wasn't lusting after a person. She was lusting after her own disowned power. But here's where the obsession becomes dangerous. Because shadow projection doesn't just create desire, it creates addiction. And addiction? That's your psyche telling you you're running out of time. Now ask yourself, who are you obsessed with right now? And what part of you are they reflecting back? Is it your disowned confidence? your buried rage, your exiled sexuality, your forbidden wildness. What would happen if you stopped searching for those qualities in others and started embodying them yourself? What if the lust you feel isn't a sign of weakness, but a sign of readiness? Your psyche telling you it's time to reclaim what you've lost. But here's where it gets even darker. This is why women lust for their own shadow. And it doesn't just create desire, it creates addiction. Think about the relationships you couldn't leave, the people who were wrong for you, toxic even, but you couldn't let go. That's not love. That's the shadow, desperately trying to complete itself through another person. You're not addicted to them. You're addicted to the feeling of wholeness they give you. The illusion that if you can just possess them, you'll possess the parts of yourself you've lost. But it never works, because you can't integrate your shadow through someone else. You can only integrate it through yourself. And that's the paradox we're about to explore. Because the very thing you're lusting after, the shadow, is the thing you're most terrified of becoming. You want it, and you fear it at the same time. And until you resolve that paradox, you'll stay trapped in the cycle, lusting, obsessing, projecting, never whole. But there's a way out, and it starts with one question. What if the person you've been searching for is you? Now, here's the part they never tell you. The paradox at the heart of shadow work. The one that changes everything. You lust after your shadow. You're magnetically drawn to it. You can't stop thinking about the people who embody it. But at the same time, you're terrified of becoming it. Let me explain. So remember what I said at the beginning, that women lust for their own shadow? Here's what that actually means. When you feel that obsessive, magnetic pull towards someone, you're not lusting after a person. You're lusting after the disowned parts of yourself you see in them, your shadow. But here's the paradox. You want those parts back, and you're terrified of reclaiming them, both at once. That's why the lust feels so intense. It's not just desire, it's your psyche in conflict, longing for what it fears. Remember what I said at the start about why you're drawn to exactly what you've been taught to fear? Here's the truth Jung discovered about women and shadow work. The shadow isn't just the parts of yourself you disowned. It's the parts of yourself you believe will destroy you if you reclaim them. You were taught that your anger makes you unlovable, that your wildness makes you unsafe, that your desire makes you shameful. So even though you lust after those qualities in others, you're terrified of owning them yourself. Because ownership feels like risk, like losing everything you've built, like becoming the thing you were punished for being. And that's the trap. You project your shadow onto others because it feels safe. You can desire it, obsess over it, even possess it temporarily through relationship, without actually being it. But here's the paradox. The more you project, the more fragmented you become. The more you search for your shadow in others, the further you get from yourself. And the lust, it intensifies, because your psyche knows. It knows you're avoiding the one thing that'll make you whole: integration. Here's the real paradox. Integration doesn't remove the fear. You'll still worry that being whole makes you unlovable, that expressing your rage will drive people away, that reclaiming your wildness costs you belonging. The fear doesn't disappear, but you choose integration anyway, because the cost of staying fragmented is higher. Jung said, "There's no coming to consciousness without pain." And he meant it, because integrating your shadow isn't comfortable. It's not a 5-step process. It's not a quick fix. It's facing the parts of yourself you've been taught are unacceptable and choosing to accept them anyway. It's letting yourself feel the rage you've swallowed for years. It's speaking the truth you've been too afraid to say. It's expressing the desire you've buried under shame. It's becoming the person you've been lusting after. And here's the most paradoxical part of all. The moment you do that, the moment you stop projecting and start integrating, The obsessive lust disappears, not because you've suppressed it, but because you've resolved it. You're no longer searching for your shadow in someone else's eyes, because you've brought it home, you've made it yours, and the people who used to consume you, they lose their power, because you're no longer dependent on them to feel whole. You already ours. Think about that for a second. The very act of integration, of becoming what you lust after, dissolves the lust itself, not through avoidance, through completion. This is what Jung meant by individuation. The process of becoming whole, not by rejecting your darkness, but by integrating it. And here's what most people miss. Integration doesn't mean you become the person you were obsessed with. It means you become yourself, the full, complete, unedited version. The version that can hold both light and shadow, tenderness and rage, softness and power. The version that doesn't need to project because nothing's been disowned. So let me ask you this. What would your life look like if you stopped searching for your shadow in others and started embodying it yourself? What if the confidence you lust after became yours? What if the unapologetic wildness you obsess over became yours? What if the darkness you're drawn to became integrated, owned, yours? This is why women lust for their own shadow, and why integration dissolves the pattern. You'd stop repeating the pattern. You'd stop falling for the same type. You'd stop feeling that compulsive, obsessive pull, not because you've numbed yourself, but because you've completed yourself. And that's freedom. But freedom isn't passive. It's not something that happens to you. It's something you choose. And that choice? It starts now. So here's where we land. You've spent your whole life projecting your shadow onto others, lusting after qualities you've disowned, searching for yourself in everyone else's eyes. And now you know the truth. The person you've been searching for is you. But knowing isn't enough. Integration requires action. So let's talk about what that actually looks like. First, you have to identify your shadow, not theoretically, practically. Who are you obsessed with right now? Who makes you feel that magnetic pull, that compulsive desire? Write down their qualities, the ones that consume you, the ones you can't stop thinking about. Are they unapologetically confident, wildly expressive, comfortably angry, freely sexual? Those aren't their qualities, those are yours, the ones you've exiled. Second, you have to ask the hard question. What would happen if you embodied those qualities yourself, not in some abstract future version of yourself, right now, today? What would happen if you stopped swallowing your anger and let yourself feel it, express it, use it as fuel? What would happen if you stopped dimming your desire and let yourself want what you want without apology? What would happen if you stopped making yourself small and took up the space you've been taught to avoid? This is where most people stop. Because the answer is terrifying. You think, if I become that, I'll lose everything. I'll be rejected, abandoned, unloved. But here's the truth. You're already losing yourself. Every time you project, every time you disown, every time you shrink, you lose a piece of who you are. Integration isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming whole. Third, you have to practice embodiment. Start small. Find one shadow quality, just one, and bring it into your life. Maybe it's saying no without explanation. Maybe it's expressing anger instead of swallowing it. Maybe it's wearing what you want, speaking what you think, wanting what you want. And yes, it'll feel uncomfortable. It'll feel wrong. Like you're breaking a rule you didn't know existed. That discomfort? That's growth. That's the shadow coming home. Fourth, you have to notice the shift. As you integrate, the obsessive lust will start to fade. Not because you're suppressing it, but because you're resolving it. The people who used to consume you will lose their power because you're no longer dependent on them to feel whole. You already ours. And here's what'll surprise you. New people will start showing up in your life. Not projections of your shadow, but reflections of your wholeness. Because when you're no longer fragmented, you attract integration, not obsession. So let me ask you one more time. What part of yourself have you been projecting onto others? What quality have you been lusting after that's actually yours? What would happen if you stopped searching for it and started being it? Because here's the final truth. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's not something to fear or suppress or project forever. It's you. The disowned, exiled, buried parts of you that have been waiting, sometimes for decades, to come home. And the lust you feel, that magnetic, obsessive pull, that's not weakness. That's your psyche calling you back to yourself. This is why women lust for their own shadow, calling you to integration, to wholeness, to the life you were always meant to live. So stop searching for your shadow in someone else's eyes. Turn inward, face the darkness, reclaim what's yours. You'll always carry some version of that childhood wound, the fear that being fully you means being abandoned. Integration doesn't erase that, but it teaches you something more important. The people who can't love all of you were never loving you. They were loving your performance, and you've been dying under that mask your whole life. So yes, reclaiming your shadow is terrifying. Yes, it might cost you relationships, but staying fragmented, that costs you yourself. And that's not a price you can afford anymore. Because the person you've been lusting after, it's been you the whole time.
And you're ready to be free.